I'm not a very smart person. I'm enjoying the ignorance. Like, I'll try to fake something in the wrong language.
For years, George Clooney wasn't just a movie star, he was a myth. The kind of Hollywood figure people pointed at and said, some guys really do have it all. Fame, confidence, charm, influence, and above everything else, a marriage that looked almost too beautiful to be real. But behind the glossy photographs and elegant award show moments, something quieter and far more painful was building. You didn't see shouting. You didn't see scandal. What you saw was a man slowly becoming a stranger to his own happiness. Clooney, the same man who once made the world laugh with his effortless charisma, began showing small cracks his fans never noticed. Only Amal saw it. And when he finally decided to share what had been happening beneath the polished surface, the truth didn't feel glamorous at all. It felt heartbreaking. Because long before the world sensed trouble, Clooney had already been fighting a silent battle between love, identity, and time. A battle that began decades before Amal ever walked into his life. And as we dive deeper into his story, it becomes clear that the biggest heartbreaks don't explode. They fade in slowly, like a sunset you don't realize is happening until the sky is already dark. But that wasn't the whole story. Before Amal, George Clooney spent decades insisting he was simply not built for marriage. After his early 90s union with actress Talia Balsam ended in disappointment, he became Hollywood's favorite bachelor, the man who made loneliness look effortless. He spent his days inside film studios and his nights laughing with friends or supporting political causes. Clooney acted like he enjoyed the freedom, and to a certain degree, maybe he did. But privately, he carried a quiet kind of emptiness. The type that success cannot erase and attention cannot soothe. It wasn't dramatic. It was simply the feeling that something was missing, something he didn't believe he deserved anymore. Then came the summer of 2013. At his villa on Lake Como, a mutual friend brought someone unexpected into his world. Amal Alameddin, a human rights lawyer whose resume read like a history book and whose presence was so effortless that Clooney later said he felt a shift the moment she walked through the door. She wasn't dazzled by fame. She didn't care about Hollywood. She was brilliant, focused, and unlike anyone he had met. Their connection was almost immediate. It didn't follow the usual script of celebrity romance. It was quiet, intellectual, and magnetic. By April 2014, Clooney found himself down on one knee in his kitchen, asking a question he swore he'd never ask again. The proposal didn't unfold like a Hollywood fairy tale. It was awkward, full of nervous laughter and long pauses, but it was real. When Amal said yes, something inside Clooney opened, a part of him he thought was long gone. And that September, when they married in Venice, the world believed they were witnessing a perfect beginning. And for a while, it truly was, until life began shifting underneath their feet. The first years of their marriage were a golden era. Clooney went from late-night drinks and endless film sets to being a devoted husband ready to build a real family. When their twins, Ella and Alexander, were born in 2017, Clooney described the moment as his life's greatest gift. He had everything: a home in Provence, a partner he admired deeply, children he adored, and a shared mission through the Clooney Foundation for Justice. They became a symbol of intelligence and glamour intertwined. She stood before the United Nations. He directed films with purpose. Together, they were Hollywood's power couple, the kind people called unbreakable. But marriage doesn't break loudly. It breaks softly, in the moments between obligations, in the gaps created by ambition, in the quiet habits that grow when no one is watching. The truth is, even the strongest love can start to weaken when two lives begin drifting in different directions. And by 2025, that drift became harder to hide. Because the cracks didn't come from scandal, betrayal, or conflict. They came from something far more subtle: time. By 2025, George and Amal had been married for more than a decade, practically a lifetime by Hollywood standards. But the life they built together suddenly pulled them apart. Amal accepted a prestigious teaching role at Oxford, a dream she had always held close. Meanwhile, Clooney prepared for his long-awaited Broadway debut in New York. For the first time in their marriage, they weren't just busy, They were living on entirely different continents. Friends told Radar Online that this wasn't the usual separation of two high-profile professionals. It felt deeper, quieter, almost like a trial separation neither of them wanted to admit. Amal lived in England with the twins. George spent long nights rehearsing in a small New York apartment, sometimes alone after a show, sipping a drink he once promised he would give up. Clooney publicly smiled through interviews, insisting they had nothing to fight about. He said they never argued. But relationship experts warn that too much harmony can hide something dangerous: the absence of real communication. Because when couples avoid conflict to keep the peace, pain gets buried instead of addressed. Eventually, silence becomes its own kind of distance. Clooney admired Amal endlessly, but admiration sometimes carries guilt. She was younger, driven, and speeding forward with purpose. He was older, slower now, and wrestling with his own insecurities beneath the surface. And then came the night that changed everything. The turning point didn't involve scandal or betrayal. It came wrapped in applause and glimmering lights. In June 2025, George and Amal appeared together at the Tony Awards. Cameras captured their elegance, their smiles, their seemingly effortless chemistry. But after years of careful discipline, George made a decision that pulled him back into an earlier version of himself. He drank heavily. He later admitted he ended the night like a high school drunk, trying to laugh off the embarrassment. The public found the confession amusing. Amal didn't. For her, it wasn't about the drinks. It was about what the moment represented. A reminder of the man he used to be, the young actor who stayed out too late, who arrived on sets hungover, who treated excess like a personality trait. She loved the man who had outgrown all of that, not the man reliving it. One insider said Amal was furious, not because he slipped, but because he bragged about it afterward. She valued discipline. She valued intention. And hearing him talk about losing control shook her. When George tried to downplay it, she drew a firm line. She told him it wasn't something she was willing to overlook. Those words hit him harder than any headline ever could. As the weeks passed, silence filled their home in Provence. He rehearsed lines in the garden. She handled international cases from her study. Their conversations became polite, careful, and thin. The house that once echoed with laughter felt strangely hollow. And the public had no idea, at least not yet. By early 2025, rumors began swirling across tabloids. Headlines hinted at growing distance, emotional strain, and a marriage running on autopilot. Radar Online reported that George and Amal were living what friends described as a trial separation. Amal took the twins to England. George stayed in New York, chasing a dream that suddenly felt lonelier than he expected. From the outside, everything looked fine. They still praised each other in interviews. They still supported one another publicly. But in private, time apart stretched longer than it ever had before. FaceTime calls became their routine, but even those couldn't bridge the emotional space forming between them. Amal's days were packed with lectures, casework, and research. George's nights were filled with performances, applause, and then silence. They were living parallel lives. Neither was wrong. Both were simply becoming who they were meant to be. But sometimes love can't stretch as far as ambition demands. Clooney missed the noise of family, the chaos of children running around, the grounding presence of Amal in the kitchen. Oxford gave Amal purpose. New York gave George nostalgia. And when the rumors hit their peak, the world held its breath. But then something unexpected happened. They appeared together at the Venice International Film Festival, smiling as if nothing had ever gone wrong. Cameras flashed. Fans cheered. The illusion of perfection snapped back into place. Amal radiated confidence. George looked composed, almost relieved. For a moment, everyone believed the crisis was over. But sometimes a perfect picture is just a well-practiced performance. When Glamour magazine published Amal's interview that autumn, the world listened closely. She had always been private, intentional with her words. But in this interview, her tone carried a quiet heaviness. She praised George for being supportive, especially during the early years of motherhood. She spoke with gratitude, but also with a softness that felt like someone remembering, not someone living it in the present. The interview made headlines. Fans interpreted her words as reassurance, but those who listened carefully heard the exhaustion beneath them. They heard the subtle ache of someone holding onto something that was already changing shape. Later that year, George gave a rare interview of his own. When asked directly whether the rumors of separation were true, he didn't deny them. He didn't confirm them either. Instead, he spoke like a man processing his grief in real time. He said marriage wasn't about perfection. It was about holding on while everything else changes, including yourself. Then he admitted something that struck everyone listening. Sometimes you sit across from the person you love and feel miles away. People close to him said this was his quiet confession, not of wrongdoing but of heartbreak. The truth was simple. Two good people had slowly become strangers, not through anger but through evolution. Their love didn't shatter, it faded. And yet something surprising remained. By late 2025, George and Amal were no longer trying to force their lives to fit the same shape. Friends said they had chosen to spend more time apart, not as punishment, but as acceptance. Amal continued teaching at Oxford, raising the twins in the calm countryside. George spent more time in Provence, working on occasional directing projects, managing the vineyard, and reflecting on the years that had slipped by. People close to the couple said they still loved each other deeply. They just couldn't live the same life anymore. Amal thrived on structure, routine, and purpose. George thrived on nostalgia, creativity, and a slower rhythm. They were simply built differently, and neither wanted to hold the other back. Clooney privately admitted he was haunted by time. He wasn't the energetic man he once was. His eyes were tired. His performances drained him. His body reminded him of its limits every morning. Meanwhile, Amal seemed to be entering the strongest chapter of her career, focused, radiant, unstoppable. He often replayed the night he proposed, remembering how desperately he hoped she would say yes. He said quietly to one confidant, "Maybe I just wanted to prove I could be someone forever." But forever is different in real life. It bends, it stretches, sometimes it breaks. Still, there was warmth. The twins visited him during school breaks, filling his home with laughter. Amal still called. They spoke about the kids, school events, her foundation, his shows. They didn't talk about their relationship, but maybe that was its own kind of tenderness. Some insiders believed they were slowly rebuilding. Others believed the separation had already become permanent, but the announcement would come later, when the dust had settled. It didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a transition neither of them fully understood yet. And that leads us to the final question. By the end of 2025, George Clooney had learned something the world often forgets. Even the most beautiful stories can break in silence. What began as Hollywood's most admired relationship had transformed into a lesson about age, ambition, distance, and what it truly costs to stay connected. The world still saw smiles, but those close to them saw something different: shorter interviews, fewer jokes, and long stretches of silence between them. Amal built her life around justice and academic brilliance. George built his around memories, creativity, and slowing down. Neither was wrong. They were simply growing in different directions. Maybe their marriage isn't ending. Maybe it's evolving. Maybe they're finding a new shape that looks different from what the world expects. Or maybe, quietly and respectfully, they are letting go. Whatever happens, one truth remains. Love doesn't always disappear. Sometimes it just changes form. Do you think love can survive everything George and Amal have endured? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more untold Hollywood stories.